and I will take the suddenance for this meeting of the Risk and Audit Scrutiny Committee on the 22nd of August 2023. Councillor Buchanan? No. I can see that we have present Councillor Donnelly. I have apologies from Councillor Fulton, and I can see that Councillor Dewar has joined remotely as a substitute. Councillor Gowland? No. Councillor Handybod? No. I can see that we also have present today Councillors Johnson Dempsey, Kerr, Lockhart and McDougall. We also have a number of officers present, and with that I'll pass you back to the Chair to commence today's business. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, I'll open the meeting by asking if there are any declarations of interest.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Keat is requesting to speak.
Okay, Councillor Keat, you wish to speak?
Councillor Buchanan, I was a bit late in getting into the meeting, so it was just to let you know that I'm on the meeting. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you. Sorry, didn't press the button there. Any declaration of interests? Not seeing anything. Okay, thank you very much. In which case I'll move on to item 2 on the agenda, which is the minutes of the previous meeting. Does anyone have any matters arising from those or questions? Not seeing anything. Okay, I'll move those minutes as a correct record.
I'll second, Chair.
Thanks, Mary. Moving on to item 3, Internal Audit Activity Report as at the 4th of August 2023. And I'll pass over to Yvonne from Audit and Compliance to speak to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So the usual internal audit activity report that comes to the committee each meeting. At this time of year, the report's quite light because a lot of work has really just started and isn't taken through to a conclusion so that we can report to the committee. But just by way of update, this obviously covers the period in paragraph 3.1, 10th June through to the 4th of August. In terms of progress, we're noting at 4.1 that 6% has been complete to draft report stage, but to just give the committee a wee bit of comfort, there's a further 18 of the assignments are in progress. One of the points just to pick up with you, as you will see in the audit plan, there's a significant amount of time against the Fusion project, and we thought it would be prudent to provide a bit more of an update, an interim update in terms of the work that we're completing there. So members can be expect to see that at the October meeting. Within the activity report itself, I'll give you an update in terms of the work that we've been completing in this area. As we would usually do, we've attached our key performance indicators at Appendix 1, and at Appendix 2 we're listing all of the assignments that were completed in the period. There are no significant pieces of work, so all we've done in Appendix 2 is briefly summarise the assurance output and noted for your information the reports that have been provided to our external clients. The remainder of the report, first of all, covers the Glasgow City Region City deal, and as we've been in the habit of doing, we're signposting members whenever there's an audit report issued for them to either access the link, or within this report there's a brief summary of the work that was undertaken and the audit output from it. So 2 pieces of work in the period. The first piece of work covers the 23-24 audit plan. The first assignment in that was looking at programme skills, knowledge and experience arrangements, and at 5.2 we detail out the areas that were looked at, and at 5.3 we give you a brief summary of the output, noting the most important point that key controls were in place. The second report was in relation to the internal audit annual report and annual governance statement, and that's looking back to 22-23. So a similar report that would come to our own audit committee for South Lanarkshire Council. The same type of audit report would go to Glasgow City Region City deal. And at 5.4, we're noting that report has been issued and that it was a positive audit opinion. There is a link in the report at 5.1 if you want to go in and read any of the reports in detail. The final part of this report, public sector internal audit standards. Members will remember that we've been providing updates in relation to this. We had an assessment and we were awaiting a draft report. That draft report was issued at the tail end of last week, so we're in the process of finalising that. Given the gap between now and the audit committee in October, once I have a final copy of the report, I'll circulate that to members and formally present it to them in October, which obviously gives you the opportunity at that point to ask any questions you have around it. In terms of the key messages coming from the report, there's nothing different to what I've been stating within all the updates. There aren't any significant issues, and it's a positive assessment, but the detail will follow within the report, and there'll be the opportunity in the October committee for members to ask questions around either the content or the actions that follow on from that. That's the main points within this report. So if I can just take you back to the recommendations at 2.1, it is that the committee note progress. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks very much. Does anyone have any questions for Yvonne on that report? It's early days. Okay, thank you very much. So I'll ask the committee to note the report.
I'll second, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to item 4, which is our fraud statistics annual report. So again, I would ask Yvonne, our audit and compliance manager, to speak to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So this is the annual report for 22-23, and it provides a summary of fraud statistics for the year to 31st March 2023 and gives you a comparison for the same period in 2022. The start of the report just gives you some comfort around how we gather those statistics and the comparability of the figures from one period to another. The kind of main part of the report sits within section 4 on page 16, and that's the results and the detail within the tables within that section. So at 4.3, what we do is we talk you through our case load in the year. So we're basically giving you numbers and values in relation to cases we had open at the start of the year, ones that were reported, ones that we closed, and therefore the net figure being our work in progress at the end of the financial year. One thing that you'll notice different in that table in the middle is Department of Work and Pension referrals. We've removed those. That's in relation to a point that was made at a previous committee where there was a question around the ability for us to progress cases through to a conclusion quickly. Within those cases are ones that come to us from DWP. They're not within our control. All we do is we answer questions that come to us. So therefore that caseload isn't really for me to progress, it's only to respond. So to try and give a more accurate picture, we've taken those figures out, so that what you're seeing there at work in progress at 31st of March of 136 cases with a value of 70,000 are all things that are being progressed within South Lanarkshire Council. These frauds are all led by DWP. We are mindful of Social Security Scotland and the impact this will have through time. When this impacts on the figures, we'll clearly state that within the report and provide some narrative around it so you can understand how that impacts on the figures we're reporting and how we're progressing frauds. At this point in time, DWP continue to lead in all fraud cases, even when Social Security Scotland are involved. So we'll continue to report in the manner that we have been for the moment and obviously reflect any change in circumstances when or if that's appropriate. If I take table 1, the fraud caseload, and drop down to table 2, the analysis of closed cases at 4.5, what we're doing there is taking the cases that were closed in the period, which was 16 of those at a value of 16,000, and we're breaking that down in terms of an outcome, whether that was founded, where there's insufficient information to reach a conclusion, and where it was investigated and found to be unfounded. So you can see that the majority of the cases closed in the period were founded, and I can confirm that most of those related to thefts. The final analysis is in table 3, where we look at the founded allegations and we break down where those allegations sit. So were they perpetrated by an external, an internal party, or was it a benefit fraud? And you can see the breakdown on table 3 that 7 were external, 1 was internal, and 1 was in relation to a benefit case. From an internal audit perspective, improvement plans are really important. So it's not just about investigating the fraud, it's about how we change our controls so that a similar opportunity doesn't present itself. So there's just a reminder at 5.1 about the fact that that is integral to this process. In section 7, financial implications, just a brief update in terms of NFI. That exercise is continuing. We are in the year where we investigate the matches that are returned, and we're well through with that in terms of our investigations and loading that onto the NFI website. So there is good progress there, and we're on target to complete by the end of the financial year. And that's the main points within this report. So if I can just take you back to the recommendations, at 2.1 it is that the contents of this report are noted. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Do we have any questions from the committee on the fraud report? Councillor Kerr?
Oh yeah, this might seem like a stupid question, but just at 3.2 on page 15, down at the bottom of that little paragraph, it's for investigation insurance losses resulting from a failure in internal controls or which have been investigated by internal audit. Just wondering, what does that mean?
That means where the theft has happened because we don't have good internal controls. For example, something hasn't been locked, there isn't a log of safe keys. So where it's something where we can put a control in place to prevent it happening, then that's something that would be included within those statistics. If it's a theft where there are no internal controls that would have prevented that theft, we don't include that in these stats. But very often, for most thefts, there are opportunities for the council to improve their internal controls to deter any future thefts, and that's essentially what we mean around that, if that makes sense.
Are you happy with that answer, Susan? Sorry. Okay. Any other questions on that report? Okay, I don't see any questions. I'll note that report and for the committee to note.
I'll second that, Chair.
Thanks, Mary. Okay, moving on to item 5, the year-end insured risk report 22-23, and this is for Scott Dunsmore, our insurance and risk management advisor, to speak to.
For 22-23, this is the standard report that we bring to committee each year that looks at the number and cost of our insurance claims, trends over the last 5 years, and what we're doing to manage insured risks. Section 4 of the report provides an overview of the data, and I would refer you to Appendix 1 here, which provides a summary for the last 5 years. We are seeing an improving trend in claims numbers over that period. Going back to 18-19, we had over 1,000 claims. Last year, 22-23, we were down to 879. So that's below average. And I'd also highlight here that we had an unusually low number of claims in 2021 due to the pandemic and the reduced council operations at that time. In terms of claims costs, on average, claims costs come in at just under £2.2 million. The costs have fluctuated over that 5-year period, and for 22-23, we are above average at £2.474 million. The main reason for that increase is due to a significant burst pipes claim, where a high number of council houses were affected in December last year. The self-insured cost of that loss is £500,000. I'll come on more to speak about that in due course. Moving on, Section 5 of the report provides a direct comparison of 22-23 figures against the prior year. We have seen an increase in claims numbers of 7% and an increase in claims cost of 10%. Section 6 to 8 of the report provides some of the key findings, and I'm just going to pick up a few highlights as I run through the report. On combined liability claims, we have seen a bit of a spike in claims numbers. These are mostly as a result of winter-related claims from members of the public that impacted upon both roads claims and housing, where we've seen property and water damage. Motor claims, claims numbers are up by 1% on the previous year. They're not far away from the numbers previously that previously came in.
Looks like Mr. Dunsmore is frozen.
Okay.
Can you, Paul? Thanks.
Chair, I'll just finish off the paper that Scott was presenting. The section that I think Scott had got to, it was around property claims. So that covers, and this is on page 24 of your papers, it covers the property claims position. There is content in there, you can see this at 8.4, about a reference to the severe weather event that happened just prior to Christmas last year. And as it says there, after a period of very cold weather, followed by a sudden thaw, there were an exceptional number of burst pipes which occurred within council properties. So 8.5 goes on to explain that the overall value of the escape of water burst pipe claims for affected properties is £2.5 million. So in line with the current insured excess for escape of water on the council's property insurance policy, the council picks up the first £500,000 with the property insurers picking up the costs above that level. So a significant degree of insurance cover for what turned out to be a really costly event there. There's also 8.6 content about the number of house fires resulting in insurance claims. That's come down by 15, from 28 incidents to 13. And as it says, their costs have reduced commensurately. And you can see the figures there at the foot of section 8.6. Section 9 covers what are called insurance hotspots. So what Scott was picking out in his paper is areas of work that have been progressed to try and mitigate what we see as being insurance hotspots. So you can see a number of things picked out there under property, motor and combined liability. So for example, that first bullet point, it says a property insurer survey programme has been undertaken by the council's insurers. A report was subsequently prepared detailing a number of actions to address fire and security risks. So again, we can see the benefit in the figures of the work that's taking place there. I'd probably just focus on section 11 at the end of the paper, which talks about financial implications. So what that goes through are figures which have appeared across the paper in terms of the costs that need to be met from the council's insurance fund. So these are just like policies that you'll have yourself in terms of things like home and motor insurance. There's an element, the excess, that you need to pick up yourself, and that's the same with the council's policies. And those amounts come from the insurance fund. So you can see that sort of culminates in section 11.4. It talks about the total cost of loss, and then it compares that to year 2021-22. So again, the section concludes by saying that we'll need to continue to monitor the balance of money within the insurance fund, because that, as you'll gather from that section, is under pressure. So in terms of the recommendations that were there in the paper, if I go back to section 2.1, it's really looking for noting of that report and the proposed work to mitigate insurance hotspots be noted as well. So again, happy to try and answer any questions. Thank you, Chair.
Hi, looks like Scott wants to come back in. I don't know if you want to add anything. Oh, he's disappeared. So thank you, Paul, for covering that for us. Okay, so we've got a couple of people wanting to ask some questions. So Councillor Johnson Dempsey, do you want to ask something?
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, the question is really for Scott, but I'm wondering if maybe you'll have an answer there for me. At 8.4 and 5, obviously, with regards to the burst pipes and escape of water, given that's a fairly considerable number that we are completely absorbing as part of our policy excess, I'm wondering if there's been consideration given to the fact that there may be a cost of living effect here, and that it's domestic properties that the council owns where where the residents may not be adequately using their heating to try and cut down, and also that can cause an impact. And given that we are eating those costs, maybe that's money that could be better put into mitigation or avoidance of the risk.
You want to come in, Paul?
Yeah.
Thanks. Thanks, Councillor Johnson-Dempsey. In terms of discussions that I've had with the insurance team on this, and also with the housing and technical resources staff, there does seem to be evidence that across last winter, people were reluctant to put their heating on, right? And that gives an issue, because it means that you're obviously far more likely to have pipes freeze. So even if the water, even if the heating was kept on at a reasonably low level, there's a better chance, right, of pipes not freezing. But that hasn't been the case. There's a whole number of people haven't been able to do that. I think part of what happened last winter was just about the severity of the event and then the thaw. So in terms of activity that the council can undertake to mitigate that, there were a couple of papers that were taken to the council's executive committee back in October and at the end of November last year. In fact, I think it was September and then at the end of November, about initiatives to try and get money to people to enable them to keep heating on. So that is something that was done. And I think that would have been well underway by the time we got to that severe weather event in December. Who knows, it may have been worse if the council hadn't put those mitigations in place. But there's definitely something in the point you raise.
Okay, thanks. Does Scott want to come back in on that?
Connection earlier. Just to add to what Paul's saying there, I'm actually sitting on a work group that Housing and Technical Resources are leading on to look at winter planning for the year ahead. So there's a bit of work being done to raise awareness of prevention of burst pipes. There was also a significant issue where quite a number of tenants did not have contents insurance in place last year. There was, we think, over 1,000 properties affected here. Large numbers of people with no insurance, nowhere to replace their contents. So it's just to make the committee aware that we do actually operate a contents insurance scheme whereby tenants can get cover from as little as £12 per year for a £4,000 limit of cover, basic level of cover there. So it's something that we're keen, again, as part of this winter planning, to raise awareness of the importance of contents insurance and that particular scheme, to allow people to tap into that in the event that we do see a further issue with burst pipes this year. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Dunsmore. Is that okay? Thank you, Cal. Okay, we also have Councillor Lockhart wishes to speak.
Thanks. This is a question I can't pick out from this what the premiums are. I mean, I've just done my own insurance, which is ridiculous how much it's gone up by in the current year. And like you, I pay the first whatever it is of every claim, and then they pick up the rest. But the premium, the total premium, has gone up by 25% over in the last year. And I was told that the insurance companies now are enforcing unilaterally a 12% inflation increase in the premium before any other bits and pieces, as it were. And I'm just wondering, what does the council actually pay per year for its insurance, effectively? I can't see that number. And has the council factored in that next year that's going to go up by 12 or 15 or 20% or whatever the number is that these guys choose to impose? Thank you.
Scott wants to come in. Thank you.
Last year, our insurance premiums, we do carry quite high level excesses on these policies, ranging from £100,000 up to £500,000 on our liability policy. So we self-insure quite a chunk. Premiums last year came in at £2.6 million for all policies, and we are about to go out to tender this year. We'll be issuing that tender shortly. So we have factored in some projections on potential increases, and we will go to the market and see if we can get the best possible deal for the council.
Thanks, Mr Dunsmore.
Well, thank you, Chair. Just have you had an estimate yet? You don't have any idea what they're going to put this premium up to yet? Because you're sort of over a barrel. I mean, the market tends to, they all talk to each other. And I just, I wonder what defence we have. I know self-insuring is important. A second question is, we self-insure. Do we have a fund anywhere? Because I know lots of companies have what they call captive insurers, which sit in the Cayman Islands or wherever it is, where you put pots of money to sit and manage tax-free, essentially, to meet your self-insured insurance claims. Do we have such a thing?
Just taking each of these points in turn, in terms of the estimated premiums for the forthcoming year, we have spoken to our brokers to get a kind of indication of potential increases across the different classes of insurance. Until we actually approach the market, we won't know definitively, what we can get back from the insurers. So that will be looked at in a lot of detail when we get the responses into the tender. In terms of the question about a captive insurance company, it's not something we have looked in the past at a pooling arrangement with other councils that didn't go ahead. But as it stands, we do operate a self-insurance fund that pays basically for our insurance premiums and for the cost of self-insured claims.
Sorry, can I keep going?
I think Paul wants to just come in.
Yes, yeah.
Councillor Lockhart.
It would probably be best to get Councillor Lockhart's question first, and then I can maybe add a wee bit into what Scott was saying, Chair, if that's okay.
Yeah,
So happy for your question, Councillor Lockhart.
I think I've now lost what it was. It was you self-insure. Does that mean that you're actually putting aside an estimate of 500,000 into a pot, or do you simply find it from wherever you got some spare cash at the time?
So what happens, and it's a system that we've run for a long number of years now, across the various resources within the council, we've got an element of budget which is there to pay for insurance costs. And that's reflective, broadly, of how the cost of insurance sits across the council's departments. So that's gathered into a central pot. And from that, Scott pays out the premiums, and he also pays out those self-insured costs. So every year, right, there is a balancing act between those outgoings and the monies that we collect in from the resources. Sometimes we do have to put extra money in, right, if there's a particularly bad year, right? But by and large, right, Scott always does a really good job at managing this in conjunction with the finance staff, right? And we've kept this going for a long number of years, absorbing a whole number of increases in insurance premiums. If you think about these going back over a number of years and the different risks that have arisen with councils, sometimes the way that we do that is through taking a higher excess, right, and trying to focus activity. So, for example, some of these things that are in that section 9 around insurance hotspots, we focus activity at areas where we can try and target a reduction in the loss. So, for example, things like driver claims, things like fires. So, we through a combination of managing the fund, managing the excesses and the tender exercises that Scott talks about, and trying to get focused activity to improve behaviour on behalf of the people and the assets that we're insuring. We've kept this going for a long while now. So I've got every confidence in Scott to keep this going without the wheels coming off this particular van, if I can put it that way.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Donnelly, do you want to ask a question?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Scott, I think it's a question to yourself. Are there plans to communicate strategies to the tenants to avoid this in the coming year, and also to advise tenants of the contents insurance available at a very reasonable rate from the council?
To come in, Scott.
Actually, yesterday I was in a meeting with Housing and Technical Resources and the tenants' contents insurer. So we've literally put forward this morning an article that's going to go in the Housing News that will focus both on the prevention of burst pipes and the details of the insurance cover and how people can put that in place. We'll be looking to extend that a little bit further in terms of social media and articles in the View.
Thanks, Mr. Dunsmore. Are you happy with that? Yeah. Okay, thank you. Any other questions? I don't see any other questions. I just wanted to welcome the fact that the number of fires had reduced, because obviously that can be a disastrous thing happening for families. So thank you very much, Mr. Dunsmore, for that report. So if there's no more questions, I would just move to note that report.
I'll second that, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. So moving on to item 6, so we've kind of got through this agenda, it's a fairly small agenda today, which is our forward programme for future meetings. And I'll pass over to Elizabeth Ann to speak to that, please.
Thank you, Chair. This is a standard report that comes to each meeting of the Risk and Audit Scrutiny Committee. The purpose is set out at section 1.1 to advise members of the forward programme for the meetings, and this particular report takes us up to September 2024, but also to invite members to suggest topics for inclusion in the committee's forward programme. The background is set out at 3.1, and the forward programme is attached as an appendix to the report. Just one point to note, I did advise members yesterday that the special meeting that was scheduled for September 2023, the items that were going to that meeting, the external auditor's annual report and the audited annual accounts 22-23 will now be taken to the October meeting. So just to reiterate that. So if I take members back to the recommendations, it's basically that the report and outline forward programme for the meetings of the Risk and Audit Scrutiny Committee to the 24th of September 24, attached as an appendix, be noted. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Elizabeth Ann. Are there any questions on the forward programme? Yeah, I had just wanted to raise one question. Yvonne has actually already covered it. I was going to ask about an interim report on the Oracle Fusion project, but I believe that's now coming to October, as you've already told us. Okay, in that case, can I ask for the report to be noted? And I'll move that.
I'll second that, Chair.
Okay, there's no urgent business that I'm aware of, so thanks everyone for attending and for those who presented the reports. Thank you very much.